Welcome back to the We've All Been There podcast. I'm your host, Maximiliano Striplin, and I'm here with my favorite person in the whole wide world, my lead pastor, Pastor Chad Benson.
My goodness.
How you doing, Pastor?
I've moved up all the way to the favorite. I don't know how Amy would think about that or
don't
how
tell her.
Fritter
Don't
would
tell
think
her.
about it.
Yeah, don't
So
tell
you're telling me that your wife doesn't watch or listen to the podcast. That's what you're saying.
Yikes. Yeah, I know Amber does. She talks about it all the time.
Sometimes she does. She's the one that gives me all of the content for the podcast, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So
She's
that
the
and
person behind the curtain.
ChatGPT, Yeah.
Okay, all right. Sponsored. Thank you.
That's right. How's it going, man? You doing good?
It's going good. It's going good. I'm glad to be here. It's man, I feel like we haven't recorded in a while. But
I know.
It's only been a month. Yeah.
It has only been a month,
Yeah.
but January is the longest month ever, it seems like sometimes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so here we are in January. It's almost February, though, and excited about today. Excited.
Yeah.
We got something special for everybody today. You're gonna want to hear about this. We're gonna talk about we've all been inspired.
Come on.
And that's what the podcast is all about. The we've all been there. It's just we all have stories, and we all have things that we've experienced. Some of them are highs, some of them are lows. And sometimes we focus on kind of the low moments because we want to be vulnerable and real. Yeah. But man, sometimes it's the high moments, it's the exciting moments, the inspiring moments. And so, who else better to inspire
the most inspirational person I know
than my amazing brother-in-law, my
That's
brother,
an intro right there.
Oh man,
Shawn Sanseverino.
What an intro.
And man, love my brother-in-law. Pastors an incredible church, the Grace Place in Arlington, and he and my sister are co-pastors there together and doing a fantastic job. It's kind of fun. We just get to talk about church things and what God is doing. But he is also a mountain biker, a cycler. I don't know what you call what we're going to talk about today, but
an extreme athlete.
He is, and he is
endurance athlete.
I mean, he can do it
right there.
We went mountain biking over Thanksgiving up in Arkansas and had a blast. But I was glad I had an e-bike because there's no way I could have kept up.
So much more
without
fun.
the thing. Right.
Wasn't that the trip you fell off the mountain?
No, that was last
Okay.
Thanksgiving. This Thanksgiving, I stayed on the bike and on the mountain.
Hey, Chad actually has some great bike handling skills, man.
We had fun.
Oh,
He's
man.
just a natural.
You were
We used the old BMX.
he was getting after it. I mean, riding some serious trails. It was fun.
We had a lot of fun. But anyway, Shawn's here, and man, he's got some pretty cool, inspiring story and stuff to tell us about. And so I thought, hey, let's have him on and let's talk about all those moments when we have been inspired. So, Max, you ever been inspired?
Yeah. I had a lot of people in my life that definitely have inspired. My grandpa was probably my first inspiration, just the way that he really loved people. He treated me as his kind of own son. And so I feel like he was kind of my first initial inspiration. I would say my mom is probably inspirational too. She kind of raised me on her own growing up, and she kind of was both mom and dad in the house. And so that was such an inspiration to see her do that on her own. I would say when I was at the Oaks, Pastor Scott, he was such an inspiration of what it looks like to make everybody in the room feel like you mattered, right? Yeah. He knew your name, he knew your story. And so, I feel like there's a lot of people in my life that inspired me, maybe not necessarily physically to do something, but definitely have inspired me emotionally and in my leadership to be a better person. So,
That's cool.
What about you?
I didn't go nearly as spiritual or nearly as sentimental as that. I was thinking, in fact, I sent Shawn a reel on social media the other day. There's this one that was like, this is what inspired you in the 80s. And it was like Rocky movies and like
That's
the Karate
true,
Kid. And I don't remember what all else was on there, but a bunch of those 80s movies where they have like the montage of the training and Rocky's like running up the hill and getting ready to fight the Russian guy and all that that stuff inspires me. Yeah. So, what about you, Shawn?
Awesome. Man, what inspires me most in life? Now, I don't want to be cliche.
Okay.
But, I mean, I got to give you 3 Fs. Faith, family, and fun.
Hello,
honestly, that is what inspires me. And man, when I got saved at 18 years old, I remember before I got saved, I was having a fight with my dad. And he saw that I had a lot of lack of motivation in life. And he was like, Shawn, you need to figure out what you're going to do when you grow up. I mean, that's a good challenge for any 18-year-old person. But I had just graduated high school with a 2.3 GPA. and I had a 2.3
Come on.
because I got an A in band, I got an A in PE,
Come on.
I got an A in cabinet making, you know, and I was knocking out my electives, but the classes that really mattered, those core classes, man, I struggled so bad. And, you know, when he asked me that, it was like, it was ingrained in my brain, you got to go away and go to college. And so I would think to myself, like, why would I want to go to college and continue to feel like a failure? So there was just, man, dark clouds over my life before I got saved. And when I got saved at 18, man, it was like those dark clouds just rolled away from the sky in my life. And that inspiration of going, man, the sky is blue because God is in control.
Wow.
So that honestly, that keeps me inspired.
That is cool.
And man, my family, you know, gosh, I don't want to cry, but you know, I've got a great family. My family in California is rallying around me in a really powerful way right now. My family here in Texas, our church community. So it's just amazing to see what God's doing through just these relationships. And you know, there's nothing magical about them. They're everyday relationships, but
Yeah.
I think we all just treasure it. And then, man, fun. Man, I live for fun. Chad, I feel like I'm still that, you know, 12-year-old boy. It's Christmas morning, and I got a bike for Christmas. Like, that still excites me.
I love it.
My bikes these days don't cost what a $50 bike used
No,
to cost
they don't,
anymore.
do they?
But man, I'm like that, man. You know, you show me a new shiny toy. Let's go figure out how to play with this thing. Let's go put the outfit on. You know, it's like we dress up like Superman when we were kids. I still play dress up, man.
Yeah.
But it's expensive gear.
Yeah.
I love putting my bike shoes on, and I bring gear for you when we go
He
ride.
does.
Because I love just having fun. Just everything about it, man. I love it. You know, when we get dirty, I want to be in stuff that's going to look good while we're dirty. So
I love it. And I'm
That's
just
awesome.
thinking, even too, going back to your first one and that story of making a 2.3 GPA and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Now you got a master's degree, man.
Oh.
What was your GPA
Wow.
in
Man,
your master's?
it's
do you
crazy,
know?
Chad.
You had
Like,
straight
I
A's,
was
didn't you?
scratching.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got all A's. I got one B, but it was a really high B, so my GPA looks really good. And it's just crazy. Again, that's just a testimony of God. I always say this about my education story. God rewrote my story.
Yeah.
And so I used to think I was the dumb kid
Yeah.
who came from the other side of the tracks. But I'm not that kid.
No, you're not.
I'm somebody that God's transformed. He's changed. And man, the education journey to think I would have ever
Yeah,
made
it's
it through
from going
college.
from like why would I even want to go to college to
right.
now I'm going to college extra
Yeah.
and getting a master's
Yeah,
degree.
it's quite amazing, man. I am
That's
really
awesome.
wild about it. It's just wild.
Dude,
That's so awesome. I feel like I'm inspired to go get my master's now.
I know, me too.
That's
Me
awesome.
too.
That's
Hey.
awesome.
Do it.
So you kind of talked about your dad
Yeah.
inspiring you, but then just kind of talk to me about what inspired you, or what was the biggest influence in your life to race or being motivated to race?
Man, you know what's funny? I actually have not really had a bunch of motivation to race, really. You know, the guys who like take bikes seriously and don't race, they call us weekend warriors.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I'm a serious weekend
Weekend
warrior. You know, I'm finding the training programs online and I'm following them and I'm following YouTubers and trying to do what I can just because I enjoy riding my bike. I need a challenge. So I guess what motivates me now that I really think about it is I need a challenge so that I can be consistent. Like if I don't have a goal in front of me, then that I just don't do very well. And so the challenge of picking a charity ride, not like an official race, but a charity ride. We're going to ride 100 miles, you know, this coming summer in August. So I better get my butt in gear for that.
Yeah.
So that's a motivator, because what I have found is when I tighten up the disciplines of my life, it like tightens everything up. It's like, if I need to work out hard, then I need to get up earlier and pray, and I need to continue to keep that priority. I can't slack on that. So then my morning is scheduled even better. The more I put on my plate, the more organized I am, the more scheduled I am, the more I get done. And man, when I hit the office at 9 o'clock in the morning, like I'm kind of like sometimes I feel like a psycho because
I
I'm
hit
like,
the ground running.
I'm like, dude, I've been up since 4:50. I've had 50 grams of
You
protein
built an
already.
empire before anybody even got up.
75 grams of carbs. I've prayed. I've read my Bible.
Yeah.
I've sweat. I've worked out. I've got my heart
Ready
rate
to
up to
go.
175 beats per, and I'm ready to go. And I've looked at my schedule. I prayed over it, and I'm clear about what I need to do in the day. So, man, that goal is a motivator because it keeps me on track, man.
Well, I'm going to jump in here for a minute too, and you may not mention this, but this is something I see that has motivated you to race and things like that, is also relationships.
Yeah.
I know that you guys do the hotter than heck thing every
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
Hotter than what?
But you do that with people from church.
Yeah.
You build relationships.
Oh, yeah.
I know some of the other things that you do have been because you have neighbors that like to ride, and it's in order to try to win them to the Lord and to tell them about Jesus and invite them to church and things like that. And so, to me, from the outside looking in, I see the discipline part, but also I see that there's a purpose behind what you're doing. It's not just a hobby. You're using a hobby to build relationships and disciple people and love people too. So.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Man, I met my friend who had like one old bike in his garage. He was my neighbor, and he's kind of like you and I. He just struck a conversation up with anybody, and he came over one day. I'm cutting my grass, and we just started talking, and he went on a bike ride with me, and now he has like 6 mountain bikes. He has like 2 times more the amount of bikes than I have, and we're great friends. In fact, I talk to him more than I talk to anybody else on the phone. And we go do trips together, and we spend time together and just talk about real things, real life, and it's pretty cool. One of the funny race motivators, this would be the only race connection, is there was a guy named Steve Lummer years and years ago when I first started taking mountain biking more seriously. He was a friend of a friend, and he invited me to go to Prescott to ride a mountain bike race called the Whiskey Off-Road. And I had never done anything like that, and so I entered that category as a beginner because I'd never raced. It was my first official race, and I brought another friend that I barely knew, the web designer for our church, and so we like hop in a car and never been together for more than an hour, and we spend the whole weekend together. That's just, I guess that speaks to the community side of it, Chad. But so we go up there and stay at Steve's house, and we do this race, and I got first place on the first mountain bike race we ever did. I was like, hey, that's pretty fun, man. That was really cool. And so, which kind of leads into, I don't know if you want to go there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about the race that just recently happened and all the story of where that's leading and where that's led.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. So, all the way from that story, winning that mountain bike race, I don't know what year that was. Geez, dude, it was a long time ago. It was 15, 18 years ago. It was quite a while. I had a 1996 Specialized FSR. And so that's a really old bike. It was my first mountain bike that I ever owned. In fact, my best friend that I grew up with, that we rode some mountain bikes together, my best friend Josh, he worked at a bike shop, and he said, hey, bro, you got to figure, like, at that time, I was like 20 years oldish. So he was like, hey, bro, my one of the mechanics at the shop just got done racing his bike for the season, and he wants to sell this frame, man. You should buy it, dude. You need a bike. And I'm like, yeah, bro, I need a bike. And he goes, yeah, the frame will be the frame's $1,000, and then I think we could build the rest of the bike out for another $1,000. It'll be about $2,000. Now, bro, this is in 19 freaking like 98, and what an idiot. I'm like, let's do it, bro. Like, that sounds like the wisest decision of all time. So I went out and get my first credit card and put all the bike parts on this credit card, and I pay nearly $2,000 for a mountain bike when I'm 18 years old. I'm in my last year of my 40s right now, and the funny thing, that just led to like tons of bike riding, man. So when I look back at it now, I'm like, hey, I'm glad I was an idiot and went for it. I don't recommend it and would not let my daughter make that decision, but I'm glad I did. But it's just led to a passion of riding and just being a serious weekend warrior. And this last year, a friend invited me to ride a mountain bike race called the Austin Rattler. It's just here south of DFW, and it's a 60 mile mountain bike race, and I don't know, 4,000 feet of climbing or something like that. And then if you ride a bike in the DFW, there's no climbing here. You can ride for 100 miles and get about 1,500 feet of climbing. So we're like scared, like, oh, bro, that's like twice as much climbing as we've ever done. And so, but we're like, but let's go. We're going to go out there and camp, and we're just kind of a good time. And I find out in this whole process, hey, man, this mountain bike race is a qualifying mountain bike race for the Leadville 100. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to go ride the best ride I can. I don't plan on qualifying for the Leadville 100. So
the Leadville 100 is like a really big, famous mountain bike race,
at the time, I did not really know about it, and it is a huge, famous mountain bike race. It is not a multi-stage race like the Tour de France, but it has the epicness of the Tour de France for mountain bikers. Probably would be fair to say that here in the U.S., it is the most epic, most difficult.
It's like the Masters for golfers or something.
There you go. Yeah. It's like the Masters for golfers. It's 105 mountain bike miles, and then it's 12,000 feet of climbing over the 100 miles.
It's in Colorado, right?
It's in Colorado, a little town called Leadville, Colorado. And to put it in perspective, 12,000 feet is like stacking 12 Empire State Buildings on top of one another. Wow. Another way to think about it is Mount Everest from the base to the peak is only like 11,000 and some change. So it's going to be like riding my bike up Mount Everest. So do you see why I had no aspiration to go and qualify for this?
Yeah.
You're just going to do this race for fun. You know it's a qualifier, but you're like, I'm not going to qualify. I'm just
no, are you kidding me? I'm like, no way. And we're like, we're in the third lap of this race, and I'm tired. In fact, I don't know if you guys are going to throw the picture up. I threw you guys a couple pictures.
Yeah.
But there's a picture of me like in my last lap, and I don't know if people are expecting like somebody like focus and like kicking butt. I'm just like. I'm like struggling, brother, in that picture. If you could throw it up there, it's hilarious. Yeah. I'm struggling, but somebody mentions like, hey, I think we might get in the qualifying time for Leadville, and I'm like thinking, okay, like that's like a little carrot stick. So I kind of step it up, and there's a picture with the time clock in the background, and I make the cutoff for the qualifying literally within minutes. And by the way, there's two ways to get in this race. One, you've got to be a pro. So at the Austin Rattler, there's pros from all over the world.
And they're trying to qualify for the pro division. They want to
qualify and race as a pro.
Wow.
Now, just for clarity, the pros are like 2 times faster than me or more. These guys are psycho, so there's no way I'm qualifying that way. But to qualify through the lottery system, and what they do is if you finish the race in a certain amount of time, your bid number, you get a number, a race number. Your race number gets thrown in a bucket, and then they draw about 20 names from the bucket among 400 riders.
So you got to get a certain time to qualify.
And then
after you qualify the time, you still have to go into a lottery.
So you figure if there's like 400 people and 20 lottery coins, it's like less than 5% chance. What I found out is that guys like me, weekend warriors, they want the Mount Everest experience. I mean, who wouldn't want that bucket list experience?
Yeah,
but you don't get that opportunity as a non-pro because those things aren't opened up to you. But Leadville, the race group, Lifetime Fitness, they want to open it up to everyday guys like me, which I think is pretty amazing of them.
Yeah.
And so they open it up, and guys will go 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and they'll chase these qualifying events
to try to get to go to Leadville. Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I realized I qualified. And then I'm like, where's my extra bib ticket, my lottery ticket? I don't know where it is. The car's way over there. And they're like, I see everyone gathered around the stage, and they're like, last call for, lottery coins. And I like ride my bike over there, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, my buddy's over there hanging out. I'm like, what do I do? And he's like, dude, I'm not getting my coin. He's like, I'm not going to Leadville. Like, how stupid is that? But I don't know, what kind of idiot am I? I'm like, I want to try. So I didn't have time, and there was a food truck, and I ran over to the food truck, and I said, hey, I need to turn in a lottery coin for my, like a bib tag number, but I don't have one. Do you have like an old receipt and a pen or something? And so they're like looking at me like a weirdo. So I take this like receipt and a pen, and I think my bib number is like 5030 or something like that. I write it down, and I run over to the guy collecting all the lottery tickets, and I like hand it like this, and he kind of looks at me, and he's like, touche. A for effort. Throws it in the bucket. Yeah. So I got my piece of paper in there, and
it's not even the real bib tag.
I'm like, you know, if anybody from the race hears this and goes, dude, this guy's a joke, man. Just, you know, let me know, and we'll try again later. So anyway, so I'm sitting there, and every new lottery number that is called, the place is just erupting because these guys have just been waiting for this epic moment. So I'm catching up, like, as I'm sitting there, like, with what Leadville is, the excitement, the passion. Like, I really didn't know a whole lot about it. And I'm just kicking back, just, like, kind of spacing out, like, just enjoying the environment, but not really listening for my number. And next thing I hear, bib number 1530. And I was, like, sitting there, and it's kind of quiet, and I was like, you know me, Chad. I'm like super forgetful, so I don't even know my bib number. I just randomly like glanced down, and I'm like,
wait a minute,
1530. I'm like, you know, people start cheering. I'm like, I'm just like, it's like I'm like in the fog, you know. I'm like freaking out. I drop it in there, and man, I just could not believe it. Oh my gosh, hold on. I got the Leadville coin, and awesome. Man, it was so crazy. And I'm driving home, and I'm just like, what did I just do, Chad? Like,
what is Krista gonna say?
What is my wife gonna say? Like, what am I getting myself into? And I just, you know, it was just, I was calling all my friends on the way home, like telling them about what happened, and I just like kept thinking to myself, like, dude, I have to do this. Like, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. Like, I have to step up to the door. What I felt like God opened a door for me. I have to step up to this door. Yeah. And if I count the cost too much, I'm not opening the door, because I can tell you about the cost is really high. But that led me to where we are today, and that's where the Driven campaign was born. I don't know what follow-up questions you want to ask me, but the Driven campaign is like crazy amazing.
Yeah, so I mean, we got lots of questions here, and we can get to them or not get to them, but there's just so much. This story itself is just so inspiring. So, I mean, you decided, what are you going to do from there? Like, okay, so it costs a lot of money to go to Leadville.
Oh, man.
Got to have different equipment. You got to do the trip. You got all these things. So
everything. I add it all up, and I'm like, dude, you know, all my friends are looking at my mountain bike and guys that race, and they're like, dude, you can't take that bike to Leadville, you know, and like, you know, my wife's like looking at me like, your bike's fine. Like, you know, she's like, I know how much money you spent on that bike and your road bike. Your bike's fine. And, you know, I would just put it like this. It'd be like, hey, you're going to go race in the Formula One race and bring your, you know, Mustang GT. Yeah. Oh, really? So that's kind of what it's like with the mountain bike. You know, I got a Mustang GT, but, you know, I need a Formula One. And so it's going to cost me, you know, 10 grand and some change to just go do this event. But I always, the last few years, I've been like, Lord, use cycling for something great. Like, how can I connect my passion for cycling with my purpose for the kingdom? And that's when, like, on the way home, I'm like, this event is that. This is where my purpose and my passion collide together. Yeah. And that's where the Driven campaign was born. And the Driven campaign is going to be a way for me to combine my passion and my purpose to do something great for the world around me, the influence, and utilize that influence. So we want to partner and raise money for incredible organizations for disaster relief like Convoy of Hope. We want to partner with organizations that are doing great things in the orphan care space, doing great things in human trafficking and helping underprivileged kids. And so, for me, somebody said this about cycling, and especially like ultra events and endurance athletes, that it's the most selfish thing that anybody can do, because I'm putting in, pros are it's a full-time job for them to
Yeah.
train. And so you're by yourself, you're away from your family. Everything is all consumed. Every mealtime you're thinking about training, every snack you're thinking about training, and alarms are going off all day long to keep you on track. And it's like me, training, feel, got to stretch, got to work out, got to get on the bike, got to get on this call, got to do this research. And I just thought, man, I can't, this thing cannot be about me. I don't want to spend my influence doing something for just myself. And so the way that we can make it not about me is by doing the Driven campaign. And so that is the fuel behind why I'm really going to do this, is to raise money for these organizations.
That's super cool.
So have you seen anybody else do something like this before, or how did you get inspired in this way?
Yeah, what's crazy, man? When I first got saved, I went away to ministry training school. I went away. It's like I went away to prison. Sometimes it probably did feel like a prison.
A little like
Oh,
that
yeah.
sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I went off to ministry training school, and I was at a church called Phoenix First Assembly. Now it is called Dream City. The pastor there, Tommy Barnett, is, he's one of the greats of the greats. And if many of the pastors on here probably know exactly who he is. But while I was there, he did a similar journey like this. He ran from Phoenix to LA to raise money for an incredible organization called the Dream Center. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't run from Phoenix to LA.
No.
But I'm gonna ride my bike.
I don't want to run from here to the car.
Yeah, but he raised like $1 million. I don't think I'll raise $1 million, but I'm hoping to raise at least 100,000. But it's guys like that that have done like phenomenal things, and you look at them and they seem like a freak of nature, but they're just everyday people that just, when God puts something in their heart, they just say yes to it. Honestly, they're not a freak of nature.
Yeah.
They're everyday people that do everyday things.
Yeah.
Cool. Max, you've been to the Dream
Yeah.
Center. We
Well,
took a missions trip out there last summer.
Yeah, we went last year, and then I've been, I think, 3 other times. So and I know that story. And so I remember when I first heard it, I was like, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
But super inspirational.
Yeah.
And so that's awesome that it inspired you to do what you're doing now. That's
absolutely.
awesome. Okay, so kind of moving into some of the more practical aspects of kind of your journey from here to the Leadville race, right? Is going to be, how do you keep yourself motivated on days when you feel uninspired?
Yeah, well, I want to tell you, like, I learned a long time ago that it's kind of funny because some people might say, you run off of inspiration, Shawn, but I really don't. I really don't run off of inspiration. One of the things I've learned over the last 2 years, more specifically, is that when I have a goal, I run off of the practice of what it takes to get to that goal. So in the morning, I do something that I run the play, and that's how I stay inspired. I run the play. The play is not complicated. It's get up at a certain time, wake up as soon. And by the way, whether I get up at 4:50 in the morning or get up at 8 o'clock in the morning, I have the same level of motivation. 0. I'm not motivated at 4:50 in the morning or at 7, 8, or 9 when I first wake up. There's not motivation there. But so what does keep me moving though is I know that I have a goal, and I just need to run the play every day. And running the play for me every day is my alarm goes off 5 days a week at 4:50. I get up at 4:50. I go get my water. I drink my 16 ounces of water. I pound some protein. I make an Americano for myself. I set the family daily meds out. Then I go to the couch and I read my Bible. And then I do some praying. And then I get up and I move over to my trainer. And I hop on my trainer. And I work out for an hour to 2 hours in the morning. Wow. And then as soon as I get off that, I hit the shower, get my clothes, and I'm ready to take off for the day. Yeah. And so I call that running the play. And any human can do that. Yeah. And the results, the outcome of that, I'm not in charge of that. Yeah. I'm only in charge of running the play. Yeah. And so whatever God decides to do with adaptations and growth and speed and spiritual wisdom and insight, that's all up to him. Yeah. So as long as I get up and I run the play, then I'm good to go. And I run the play again at 5 when I get home. I do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And I get my stuff out before I go to bed for my workout the next day. That helps like start my mind back into, okay, we're winding down, but we know in the morning we're going to get up and we're going to put these shorts back on to ride. We're going to pull the coffee down because I'm going to need some coffee for that ride. You know, I'm going to get my water ready because I'm going to need that on the bike. And then I'm going to grab my phone, and it's not going to sit next to me in bed because I'm going to want to grab it and look at it, but it goes on the dresser over there.
Yeah.
That's all part of me running the play. It goes on the dresser because I know that if it's over there, then I'm not going to mess with it, and I'm going to go to bed.
Yeah.
Because going to bed on time dictates
Whether
how
you
the
wake up
morning
on
is
time.
going to go.
Yeah.
And so I just run the play, and honestly, that is what helps me get the motivation, because I've learned that I'm really not motivated until I actually start doing it. So I can't wait for the motivation to start doing anything.
Yeah.
It'll never happen.
Yeah. I did an Americano yesterday and read my Bible, so
Dude, let's go.
I'm like
go.
1/12 of the
Now
way.
you need a 2-hour bike ride in there.
No, we don't need to do all that. Well,
No.
that's awesome. I was thinking about something you had mentioned while you were telling your story about how there's some really selfishness in these pro bikers, and it kind of made me think about just this thought, just as a man of faith, as a pastor, and then also just with this goal. Kind of talk me through, how do you stay motivated? How do you stay inspired?
Yeah.
But then not at the sake of your family and your faith and your friends. Yeah.
You know, I was on a coaching call yesterday with my coach, and you know, one of the things I love about the coaching team I'm working with is they're like very holistic, and they care about family.
That's
awesome.
You know, my coach, the first thing he said, Shawn, we just got off of a 3-week training block. And so this week you're going to be on the bike half the amount of time that you normally are. And I really want to recommend that you take time to plan a really special date.
That's massive.
During that block.
That's awesome.
Outside of what you maybe would normally do with Krista, because you're giving so much time away. And so it's those type of things. You know, Krista and I talk about our schedule all the time. You know, when are we going to do family time? We schedule our dates out. We put them on the calendar so that they don't get pushed out, and we make those things a priority. And I'm going to tell you, like, it's not easy. It is really not easy. And so I try to schedule my time and then just put my brain in what is happening in that time and not mess with things outside of that. And so Monday is my big sermon start. It's not my sermon prep day. It takes more than a Monday to write a sermon, but it's my Kickstarter day. And so I do nothing else on Monday but that.
Yeah.
Tuesdays is my people day. I do nothing but people and meetings and engaging with our people on Tuesdays. And so I try to do my trainings early in the morning. I hit work early in the morning sometimes, so I'll leave, get my workouts in. A lot of times when my daughter's getting picked up for school, so you know, and my wife is heading out there. So I try to do it in a way that doesn't interrupt the family. But I mean, hey, it's going to interrupt the family from time to time.
Yeah.
Weekend rides are longer, and so it's constantly being conscious of that.
It's managing attention, I think. You know, you got attention between what I'm doing over here and then what I'm doing over here, and you got to manage those things. Another thing I'm thinking here too is that what I'm hearing here is that this is less about inspiration and more about discipline.
Yeah. Oh.
And it starts with somebody like Tommy Barnett inspired me to do this. Now God's opened the door and I've said yes to it, but now I have to be disciplined even in the moments when I'm not inspired.
Yeah. The price of inspiration is discipline.
Yeah. And the routine that he was talking about there, he's like, I know what I do on Mondays. I know what I do on Tuesdays. I know what I do on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
I know what I do in the morning. There's a routine and I'm disciplined to do it. I know what I need to do in the evening. There's a routine and I'm disciplined to do it. I know what I need to do to be a good husband, to be a good dad, and there's a routine to that and I'm disciplined to it. So the price of inspiration is discipline, and that's probably more the story even here. We're calling this We've All Been Inspired, but a lot of the story here is that here's somebody who has been inspired, but is being able to accomplish some things that he's inspired to do because you have been able to set the disciplines and stick to those.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking just kind of getting away from the race, but just kind of in your own life of just all the different areas. I mean, I think about you, Pastor. I know, like on Wednesdays, that's whenever you do a lot of your sermon prepping and writing, and that's kind of where a lot of that happens. And it's like these are disciplines that you just kind of have to have in your life. And the idea of like the running the play thing, I think that really applies to everything in your life, right? Like you don't just run the plays for your fitness, you know what I mean? But you run it for your Bible reading, you run it for your family, like your date nights. And I think that's such a great thing to do in everybody's life, right? Like what does the play look like and how do you run it? Because you have to, you need to have a healthy marriage. You need to have a healthy spiritual life. You need to be healthy physically. And you have to do all these things. And sometimes it's as simple as running the play, even when you don't feel motivated. But kind of talking about, kind of back to that motivation, what do you do? Maybe a book you read, maybe a movie you watch, maybe a piece of art that you look at, or is there a place or an experience that you like to go to kind of fill that motivation when you don't wake up in the mornings feeling motivated?
Yeah. So a couple things. I love water. I love outdoors. So I like to. Cedar Hill State Park is right next to my house, and so I try to every month I try to take some time and just go over there for a few hours and just hang out. You know, they've got bike trails there. But you know, I don't bring my bike. I just go out there and hang out by the water and just sit out there. I got a little hammock. I'll bring my hammock and set it up.
Oh, that's nice.
Just, you know, throw my headphones on. Just, you know,
listen to the We've All Been There podcast so you can be inspired and motivated.
Yes, bro. Come on.
There's the plug.
Playlist number one.
You know it.
So yeah, man. So
That's
I
awesome.
like outdoors for that. And there's a book that I try to read once a year that a little over 2 years ago I got exposed by a ministry training coach to a guy named Robin Sharma. Now, if you're not good, I don't know if he's a believer or not, which doesn't really matter. But if you're like afraid to read his stuff because you don't know if he's a Christian, you're a pastor out there, that makes you nervous, then just ignore the next couple minutes. But the book is called The 5 a.m. Club, and you know, he writes it like a fable, and man, it was such an inspiring story. In fact, the reason why I get up at 4:50 is because somebody challenged me to read that book, and I found that some of the just principles, life principles in there. By the way, any principle that's good and is helpful usually has a root somewhere.
Yeah.
And if anything can produce something good in us, it's probably rooted in the Word. And so I could probably
people may not even know that's where they got
it from. I can take
true.
all of his principles in the 5 a.m. Club and probably root them all in Scripture. And some of the things that he says in there that keeps me inspired from reading a book like that is, he always says, you know, you're never going to feel like it until you start, you know, and that's kind of what helped me come to the realization, 5 a.m., I don't want to get up at 5 a.m. And then I was like, yeah, but I also don't like to get up at 8 either. I guess it doesn't really matter either way, whether I get up at 5 or 8, I still feel the same. So just get up and start moving the body. One of the other things he says is what you do every day is more important than what you do every once in a while. And that's where I the whole run the play thing came to me. I thought, you know, wow, who cares what I do every once in a while, but what I do every day really is going to shape who I am. And then, of course, how do you not mention Craig Groeschel? He has a great book called The Power to Change. And I mean, loaded with phenomenal nuggets in here. He says this, he says successful people do regularly what other people do occasionally. What a great quote. And Chad, you're going to love this one. He says, do you know what a black belt is? A white belt that wouldn't quit.
I like it.
Come on, man.
Karate Kid, wax on, wax off.
I knew you'd love it. So, you know, those are a couple of books that have really been inspiring to me over the last couple of years. And recently, there's a philosophy that my coach has, Tim Cusick. He says this. He says, do the simple things. Number one, his philosophy. Everybody should do the simple things. Number two, it comes with a warning. Simple things are hard. But when you do the simple, hard things, it always, every time, yields a result. We can't have results without doing the simple things and embracing the hard that comes along with it. And that can work for your prayer life. All these disciplines that we're talking about, it's none of it is magical. Somebody said, man, what's the makeup of a champion? They said somebody who can embrace the monotony, the simple, over and over and over, and just be relentless about it. And I think that's what makes great pastors that are relentless in their prayer life, and great youth pastors and executive pastors and leaders who are just relentless. They're not going to stop learning. They're not going to stop growing. Husbands, I'm not going to stop pursuing my wife. We're not going to stop going to marriage conferences. Yeah, we don't have it figured out. There's other parts of my wife's heart that I'm going to unlock. I'm not going to quit going on date nights with my daughter and just soaking in the drive to school with her, because there's more to be had. There's more of ourself to give, and there's more that people have to give to us. And so do the simple, hard things. They always yield results.
Man, that's good. Man. That's good. Do you have anything on that? On what inspires you, Pastor?
No, I'm just saying we titled this right, because I'm being inspired right now.
I'm being inspired too. Jeez, bro. I'm like,
yeah, I mean, we've talked about some of these same principles before. I remember we've said them kind of differently, but I remember talking about, put in the inputs and eventually you'll like the outcome. Yeah. And so many times we just want the outcome without the inputs, but we want to measure the results, but most of the time the results only come from doing the daily things, putting in all the inputs. And so I remember talking about that in one of our earliest podcasts where we said, sometimes goals are like, hey, I want to lose 20 pounds this year, but what if you made your goal, I want to do 200 workouts this year? Well, if you did 200 workouts this year, you might lose 20 pounds. You might lose 15, but you'd still be happy. But if you set your goal to lose 20 pounds, well, how do you even do that? You don't even know what to do. But if you set those input goals rather than outcome goals.
There you go. I love that.
That's so good.
Those things, that's just basically what you're saying, just in a different way. Running the play every day, putting in the inputs, and eventually you look back. I don't know, Pastor Scott, who influences me and inspires me, always talks about be faithful, 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 faithful.
Fruitful.
One day you wake up and you're fruitful, and it's such a principle of the Word of God, and a principle that, it's almost not inspiring because it's so simple, but it's so hard. Just like your mentor says and your coach says, the simple things are also hard things.
Chad, like some pastors might be watching this right now and think like they feel like they're in the wrong league. They don't feel like like this is the big leagues and they're not in the league. Yeah. But that's actually, I think, a lie of the enemy. Yeah. Because they can do it. There's nothing magical about what we do. Yeah. There's no fireworks in the morning that when we get up. There's none of that. Yeah. We look ugly just like you do. Yeah. Our breasts.
Speak for yourself.
Our face is
pretty handsome. I'm pretty handsome.
We all cannot
I'm just
be
kidding.
as beautiful
Max. That's right.
And have a name
like Maximiliano.
Maximiliano.
What in the world, man? Maximus.
I'm blushing.
Yes.
I think as we were talking about this, the question we kind of try to keep getting to is like, well, how do you do it? How do you do it? What happens when you don't feel motivated or inspired? And it's like, you just do it. You just do it. You just do it. You just run the play. And as we were talking, I just thought, for church leaders and pastors and staff, we have an extra thing that some people don't. We don't just have the grit. We don't just have the choice. We have the Holy Spirit.
We don't just have the grit.
Then when you wake up,
come on.
Then when you wake up in the morning, it's like, I don't feel motivated to do this or that, or man, I'm challenged by the things that are ahead of me, or I'm lacking the motivation because of things that have happened. But then the Holy Spirit reminds me, hey, I'm your comforter. Yeah. And in that, that's the motivation that's spiritual. That's not just man-made. You know what I mean? And so I just think that's super cool that in the midst of the things that we're pursuing for the sake of the Lord and unselfishly too, I think that's the piece of what you're doing is that, it could be a very selfish thing that you're doing, but you've made it into something that's not selfish. And so I think the Holy Spirit goes, I see that. Yeah. I see that your heart is not for self gain or me, but it's for the glory of the kingdom that you're wanting to help these areas. And so I think that's the piece that for me, I'm like, as someone, if I was in your shoes, it's like I have the motivation from the Holy Spirit even whenever I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I don't want to do this. I'm going to run the play, but I also have the Holy Spirit there
Yeah, and the fruit of the Spirit is faithfulness.
Mhm.
That's
Oh, man.
one of the fruit, the 9 different varieties of
Exactly.
the fruit of the Spirit is faithfulness.
Exactly.
And so
Yeah.
when the Spirit is working in us,
Come on.
He produces that fruit in us, that fruit
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
faithfulness.
thank you for let's call that out.
Yeah.
Listen, a kid that gets a 2.3 GPA
Yeah.
is because he's really sloppy and he has no discipline in life.
Mm.
And I do not, in and of myself, have the ability to do any of this. And Chad, to your point, it is the fruit of the Spirit
Yeah.
at work in me. It is because I don't have the discipline to do something like this, and I don't have the motivation and the inspiration. But what God's doing in me, it is His work in me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just I want to make sure that we're balancing this out too, and that you don't. You take a day off. You know you have a cheat day.
Right,
You have you have a cupcake or something every now and then.
Just a bite.
You sleep in on a Saturday or something.
That's right.
And
And
whatever.
you know what? Even in my training regiment, so my plan is to wake up at 4:50 every morning. But there's some days if there's like a super heavy training load, part of the wisdom of training is also resting correctly so your body can recover and get the adaptations. So there are some mornings like this week, so we did 3 weeks of massive training blocks, so I nailed all my trainings. But this week, I haven't gotten up at 4:50 a.m. I gave myself extra rest. This is supposed to be a rest week, so we have to have that good, healthy rhythm of work and rest. But it's on purpose.
Yeah,
We're not
there's
doing it out of
strategy and
laziness.
intention
It's
to
just
it. Yeah.
intention to it.
And that's relating that to ministry because we talk about training and things like that. But same thing in ministry. I mean, you have seasons.
Yeah.
You have seasons where you're really grinding on it, and then there are seasons where there's a little more rest, and you plan in Sabbath in your schedule, and you plan those times where you're taking a break. Or you're doing something a little different, changing up your disciplines even a little bit. I mean, we go on forever and ever, but when you build muscle, you have to, muscle confusion. You do the same discipline for 3 weeks, then you have to change it up and do it a little lighter, and then you come back and do a little different the next time. Confuse those muscles, and so sometimes you can get so in the routine and the discipline in your spiritual life that it's not fresh, and you're not getting it. We said this on the podcast one time. If you're bored, God's probably bored. So maybe you need to change it up and read differently, or pray differently, or try a different place, or those kind of things. So it's also not just about doing the same thing over and over and over and trying to get those results. Sometimes you got to mix it up and be disciplined in that too. So
if we're flowing here, one of the things I was thinking about in preparation for this podcast, and I'm glad you kind of busted the bubble of perfect mornings and never resting, because I had it in here. One of the things that rest does for me is it helps me to let go of my idol of productivity and progress. And as pastors, it's like there's the never-ending carrot of getting where we want to be, and I think our world teaches us to idolize productivity and progress. How much more work can I get done in the day? How can I learn how to work harder? How can I work smarter? All because I want better results and blah. And for me, that has been an idol for me. And so resting actually helps me to let go of that idol. And it reminds me that while I'm resting today, God's at work. He's actually in charge of this church. It's not my church. Yeah. I don't ever say my church. I say the Grace Place because it's not my church. He's asked me to steward it, but it's still not my church because I'm a temporary steward. Yeah. I'm never going to be their pastor forever. I'm a temporary pastor. Yeah. And so it's those things always just constantly remind me, he will be the king when I'm here, and he'll be the king when I'm gone.
That's so good. And we're not going to let that productivity become our identity. That's one of the things about rest. So, man, this has been rich and good. Well, you got anything else, Pastor Max?
I got nothing else. I'm inspired.
Man, I am too. Wow. Fantastic stuff. Now, some people may want to get involved in the drive campaign and say, hey man, we want to give $100,000 to a Convoy of Hope or something. How do they get involved in that, man?
Yeah, so we're in the process right now of launching the website. It will be officially launched at the end of February, the last Sunday of February. But we're asking people three things. One, we're asking them to sow. Our call to action: hey, sow into the drive campaign. Let's do something great together. Let's be awesome together. The second thing is we're saying, not only so, but would you share? Yeah. Be a part of our influence team. Help us get the word out. And I think that's the thing that most people undersell. When I have no value by just sharing this. We just have no idea what can happen when we share something. So what we're asking is, jump on right now. Like our Facebook driven campaign, like our Instagram driven campaign. I haven't opened the YouTube channel yet, but like the YouTube channel when we are subscribed, when we crack it open, so that you can be ready to be a person of influence and share the story when we bring it online. And then lastly, man, if you're an athlete out there, and we don't really know how this part is going to work, but we're saying don't just sow financially or share, but we're saying sign up. If you're an athlete, what can you do when you combine your passion and your purpose for the kingdom, for the places that God has put you, for the church that you're in, for the passions that He has put in your heart? And man, we hope that one day we can have a featured athlete section, and you know, maybe you could be on our website. And
I'll be your golfer.
Campaign that represents you. There you go. Yeah, man. But seriously, Chad, you know, how much could you raise for missions, golfing, that your church doesn't already do?
Yeah.
You know, so who knows? So that's the call to action.
Love it, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, you want to wrap us up, Pastor?
Yeah, man. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today on the We've All Been There podcast. Thanks, Pastor Shawn. Brother Shawn, my brother. For being here. Thanks, Max. Great job putting all this together and hosting us today. We would love for you to share this out so that other people can get to know us and be a part of what God's doing through the We've All Been There podcast. So be sure and like it, subscribe, share it, do all that kind of stuff. And we will see you next month on the We've All Been There podcast. See you then.